VH1's Dreamland Express with John Denver. Our grand prize winner and a friend will be John Denver's special guests at his concert at the Red Rocks Amphitheater in Colorado. And the guy is quite a host. First, he'll pick you up in his private Learjet.
Yes, I've been a pilot for at least 6 weeks. Just kidding.
John will fly you to Denver and escort you to front row seats for the show, a benefit concert for the WinStar Foundation. Then he'll host a late-night dinner. Plus, I haven't even mentioned the deluxe hotel accommodations, limousine transportation, or the $1,000 spending money. And speaking of thousands, 1,000 runners-up will win a cassette of Dreamland Express, John's latest release.
I'm flying, I'm buying, I'm whining, and I'm dining, and I'm singing, and I'm winging. All you have to do is send in a postcard.
Right. A postcard to VH1's Dreamland Express with John Denver, P.O. Box 1019, Radio City Station, New York, New York, 10101. Don't forget your name, address, telephone number, and age. Enter VH1's Dreamland Express with John Denver contest, and you could hear...
Would you prefer the window?
Hi everybody, it's Patty here to tell you about my Dreamland Express trip with John. I'm sitting out in my yard one evening, so if you hear a few noises, the dog barking, that's my dog, he's after something, who knows what, or you never know what sounds you might hear, including the wind blowing, which it seems to be doing a little bit of. Anyway, I thought that this was a way to share my Dreamland trip with some people, and I hopefully am going to be able to run down the whole thing and tell you everything that was said that I can remember. There's my dog, and so on and so forth. So, well, I guess to start off with, I can tell you that the day they called to tell me that I'd won the contest, I'm rattling paper, sorry. The day they called to tell me that I won the contest was June 26th. It was about 11:30 in the morning. My son answered the phone. I was sitting at my table writing a letter to my mother. And in the kitchen, he came out and he said, "Mom, there's a lady from MTV on the phone." And I sort of went, "You're kidding." And he didn't realize at the time what it was, but after I said that, he goes, oh, you know. And so I went out and answered the phone, which is out in our family room, and it was them calling to tell me that I had won. I was the grand prize winner in the VH1 Dreamland Express with John Denver contest. And I again said, "You're kidding." And then I had to sit down. And I was just so surprised. I didn't know what to say, and I don't actually remember what I did say. I remember she asked me a few questions. She verified my name and address and everything that was necessary, and she told me that they would be calling me back within the next couple of days to give me more of the information. By this time I was shaking. I was giggling and laughing. That was some day. I can't remember what I did that day. I think all I can remember is that I kept walking around the house and just sort of like saying, "I can't believe it, I can't believe it," you know. And then they called, I can't remember if it was, I think it was the next day, with some more of the information, and they sent us some papers that had to be signed so that they could announce my name on the television and all that stuff. And I guess a lot of people saw it on VH1, and that's the way that went. So the next few days, John was to pick us up on July 6th, which was the day of the Red Rocks concert, at an airport here in Detroit. And he, around 2:45 was what time he was due to be there. So we got all that information straightened out. And the next few days were really busy for us. I can't remember too much. We had to do some shopping and everything, of course. You have to have different things to take and clothes to wear. I think Robin was just about as excited as I was because he was the one that was going with me. So our kids went up north with their grandparents for the time that we were going to be gone. And since we'd originally already planned to go to Denver, to Red Rock anyway, and we were staying longer than just the time that was supposed to have been the contest time. He was supposed to fly us back to Detroit the next day, but what we ended up doing was arranging for John to fly us from Denver to Aspen the next day, and then we continued our vacation there until the 10th, which is about the time we were originally planning on coming home anyway. So we got all those arrangements made, and people have asked me what I did on the morning of the 6th until it was time for them to get here, and that's another time I can't remember what I did. I think I just sort of made sure we had everything packed that we would need, and just got ready. The limousine, they arranged for a limousine to come to our house and pick us up, and that was due here at 1 o'clock, which was very early because the airport is only like a half an hour away from us. But the limo was here, I think, at 10 minutes to 1, and Robin's parents were bringing our kids back so that they could see us off at the airport, and they were going to go along, and his one sister and her husband and family were also going to go along, and they were all going to meet here at our house and follow the limousine because this was at a private airport in Detroit. It wasn't part of the regular metro airport. So they were all supposed to be here by 1 o'clock. At 10 minutes to 1, the limo showed up, and they weren't here yet. So the driver was really nice, and he says, I know I'm early, so I'll just wait. Well, they all came within a few minutes, and we all took pictures out here of us in the limousine and all that stuff. And when our kids rode in the limo with us to the airport, the driver didn't mind a bit. Then we got to the airport, and of course we were still very early, about an hour early in fact. So they did have this small lobby with chairs and a lounge area where you could go in and sit and wait, so that's what we did. All these people here. While we were there, it's called the Butler Aviation. They got a telephone call, and it was for me. So I went and answered the phone. It was a photographer from one of our local papers here in Detroit. He wanted to know if he could come out and take some pictures. So I said yes, and I told him what time John was due in at 2:45. So he said, well, he'd be there a little before that. And we waited, and we walked around, and we found the USA Today newspaper box. So I said, well, John's in USA Today a lot. So I bought a newspaper, and I know just the places to look. You know, you look in the people column. I'm reading down there, and all of a sudden I go, oh my gosh. And there we were with our name in the USA Today about winning a trip to go to Denver. I couldn't believe it. So then my mother-in-law and everybody has to go back and buy a newspaper too, and we're all talking about that and everything. And then it got to be close to the time when John was due in. I think it was about 2:40. My brother-in-law came walking from the other side of the building, and he says, I think he's coming. And about that time I hear this, jet flying right over the top of the building, and I go, oh, I saw the colors, and I go, yep, that's it. And then my stomach started doing flip-flops, and oh, I think it hit me then, hey, this is for real. Until that time I did fine. Everybody kept asking me, are you nervous, are you excited, are you really nervous, how are you doing, and all this stuff, and I was fine. And then I saw that jet, Of course, it takes a while for him to land and to taxi up, and the newspaper guy got there about 15 minutes before that, and he asked me a few questions and everything, and we talked to him for a little while. So when the jet landed, it finally taxied back up around to the airport area. We all went outside to meet him, and they opened the door, and the lady from VH1, her name is Barbara. She came out, and there was another man with her whose name was, oh, what is his name? The man from Billboard, the reporter from Billboard. I think his name is Gary. Is that it? That doesn't sound right. Yeah, I guess maybe it is. So, the guy from Billboard, and then somebody else came out who I later, a few minutes later, learned was Ron Dutchendorf, John's brother. And here's all these people, my mother-in-law, my father-in-law, my brother-in-law, sister-in-law, my other sister-in-law, all their kids. We've got all these people there. And John just comes walking on down, and besides that, there were these two other ladies that came. They saw the little notice in the Detroit paper about us winning, and they found our phone number, and they called, and it seems that this woman and her mother, and they're really John Denver fans. They've been for a long time, and they've never met him, and they wanted to know if they could come out to the airport when we left and see John. So we had these extra two ladies along besides all the family. So John comes walking out, and he walks down the thing, and Barbara says hi, who she is and everything, and then John walks up, and he comes right over to me, and he goes, "Hi, Patty," and he gives me a hug, and he shakes hands with Robin. Oh, we about died. I did anyway. And we started introducing him to my mother-in-law, and everybody started talking to him. They had to refuel the jet, or they wanted to, so that took quite a while. They have to switch from one side to the other and then back and forth so that they get the tanks balanced. And he was there for about a half an hour just talking to everybody. My mother-in-law got to tell him about their campgrounds they've got. She got him to sign one of the brochures, and she said she was going to display it up at the campground with his signature on it. I think he got a big kick out of that. All the kids got to meet him, and the kids went inside the jet and were sitting in the seats and up in the cockpit, and it's all over the place. I showed him my pictures. I had made up this small album to carry in my purse of pictures of my family and of recent concert pictures of his that I'd been to this year. So he looked at that. He was really interested in wanting to take on my son beside a helicopter one day when Robin and Rick, my son, had gone over to look at helicopters and stuff at a small airport over here. They took some pictures, and there's one of Rick standing next to this helicopter, and John kept going back to that one and looking at it again and again. And he told us that he is very interested in learning how to pilot a helicopter. In fact, that he is learning how to do it. He has 20 hours now of actual flight time in learning, and he said when he gets his license that he wants to buy a helicopter. He introduced us to Ron and everything, of course, and we met everybody, and my kids strapped themselves in the seatbelts in the jet and said they were not going to get out. They wanted to go along, but finally it was time to leave, so we got inside. We took pictures, of course, pictures of everybody standing in front of the jet and doing this and that. And we got inside, and we went clear to the back and sat down. Now, at the back, there's like a bench seat. It holds two people. It's just two people straight across in one seat. And then there's one seat on each side facing that. And then in front of that, there's one seat in each side facing forward. Plus, there's a small area, like right up by where you come in the door, where there's like a little seat built into the bench type deal. So it could hold 7 people and a pilot and a co-pilot. We sat down in the back, and the guy from Billboard came over and sat in front of us. He wanted to ask us a few questions. And Ron Dutchendorf and Barbara from VH1 sat up in the front seat. John got in, and he took off. Did the piloting himself. He has to have a co-pilot, though. That's what I understand. So we talked to this guy from Billboard for a while. He asked me a few questions and asked me how long I'd been a fan, and I told him I was sort of nervous at his questions, and he kept asking me if I liked these other people, and I'd say other singers and stuff. I'd say, oh well, he's okay or she's okay and everything, He wasn't getting very far with me and trying to find out who else I liked. I felt like telling him I don't like anybody else but John, Anyway, So after a while, the guy from Billboard just sort of put his notebook away and stopped asking us questions. And they had these trays of food set up for us if we wanted them, like, they had crackers and some sandwiches and vegetables and like a deli tray. So we didn't want any for a while, and Ron came back and sat with us and started talking to us. He is really nice. He is so sweet. Just the nicest guy. And we found out that the contest was really Ron's idea. Now, he'll deny it and say it wasn't his idea, but from the story he told, I figure it has to be his idea. He said the original idea for a contest for promoting John was going to be a trip to the All-Star baseball game. And they were having a hard time getting all the arrangements made, and I don't know, somebody was giving them a hassle and this and that, so it didn't work out. And then he got to talking to Arthur Jackson of WinStar, and he told Ron, he said, well, we've always wanted John to do a concert to benefit WinStar, help us raise some money. So Ron says, okay, maybe we can work in a concert at Red Rocks this year for the benefit of WinStar. And then the video coming on VH1, and they sort of got this idea, well, why don't we take and make it a trip to a concert at Red Rocks instead of this baseball game, because they were having so much problems with it. So he says he got together with the people at VH1 and RCA, and they all talked about it, and they all had this idea and that idea, and it just all started to fall together. And that's how it came to be the contest that it was. Now, to me, that's Ron's idea, but he denies it. He says it was everybody's idea. I say it was Ron's idea. So we talked to Ron for quite a while. Right now, nothing else comes to mind. He asked me a lot of questions, too, I think, about how long I'd been a fan and stuff like that. He's really easy to talk to. Maybe that's why I can't remember too much. It just seems like we just talked quite freely. And then about, let's see, maybe an hour or more after we left
Detroit.
Put it on autopilot, and he came back and sat down to talk to us. By this time we'd had one of the snack trays we'd opened up, and he came back and he started munching on the veggies and stuff, and just as cool and calm. And a couple times before, when Ron was back talking to us and John was up in the cockpit, you can see straight up in there. You just can't see very far. It's like this little doorway or a little archway into the cockpit. And a couple times he would turn around and look back towards us and smile or something. And I gave him a thumbs up once, and he did it back to me. He said, he'd say, how you doing, or something like that. That was great. So he came back and sat down and talked to us, and he had on this really pretty turquoise T-shirt. Now, you'll see it in the pictures. And this is something I want you to remember, because later in the tape I have something else to tell you about it. So remember this T-shirt. Anybody that's listening to it, remember what I say. And I told him, it's just a regular T-shirt, really, really pretty turquoise, and it says John Denver, Tour 85 on the left side of it. So I sort of flicked the shirt sleeve of it with my finger, and I said, I like your shirt. And he said, oh, thanks. I said, I love the color of it. It's one of my favorite colors. And he said, mine too. Okay? Now just remember that. So we talked. We were talking about how we've been to Colorado before and everything, and we really got into the places we've been, and how the stars were so gorgeous up at this one place we'd been. It was so close, like you could just reach out and touch them. And John, all of a sudden, he goes, did you happen to get over under the trees where you could see this little shadow from the light, from the starlight? There's this little pool of light under the trees, and it's like the shadow from the starlight. And I said, shadow from the starlight, huh? That sounds like a song. That sure sounds familiar, It's funny. Okay, there was one point where Robin asked John if he was taking requests for the concert that night. And John says, well, I can take a request, but that's not promising that I'll be able to get it in. And he says, what did you want to request anyway? And Robin goes, sitting on the banks of a lazy little stream. And John goes, sitting on the banks of a lazy little stream. I don't know that song. And Robin says, yes, you wrote it. And he says, yeah, I know I did. And he goes, he sang us the first two lines of sitting on the banks of a lazy little stream. Oh, how I wish it wasn't a dream. And then he says, that's all I can remember. He says it has 3 verses to it, but he can't remember any of them except that. And then a nice little bit of information he gave us was that he said, but you know, the second song I wrote, the title of the second song I wrote was called Oh My Darling. And that's copyrighted. So that's sort of interesting to find out. I'm probably going to think of things all through this tape that are out of sequence, and I'll just have to tell you about them as I think of them. I'm sure I won't be able to keep everything in the correct order that it happened in. But for now, that's all that I can remember that happened on the way from Detroit to Denver. Oh, we had been telling Ron and John both about how we had planned to go originally anyway to the concert, and about how I was supposed to be meeting my friends Lou and Lori that I had never met before. They were pen pals of mine. They are, that we had just never met and had been writing for over 3 years, and we planned on spending like 2 or 3 days together, but now we weren't going to be able to because of me winning the contest and all that, and how I felt sort of bad about that. And I just told them how I had friends from all over that were going to be there at the concert, not only Lou and Lori, but my friend Virginia and a friend Gail from Ohio. Hi, you guys, if you're listening, you probably will hear this tape sooner or later, so hi, everybody that I've mentioned. So we had told them about the circumstances of this and about these people that I was looking forward to meeting so much. So they were really interested in that. You know, Ron thought it was great and everything. So when we got into to Denver, Robin went up, and there's not actually room to sit in the cockpit of the plane. He sort of knelt down on the floor in the doorway going into the cockpit to watch the landing. I guess that was something really interesting to watch. So we landed, and we had been warned that there would be video cameras waiting to tape us, and there would be reporters and everybody there when we got there. And Barbara had told us that we were supposed to get off first, and John was supposed to sort of escort us off or something like that. So I get there, and I can see inside the building, and standing inside there are my 4 friends, Lou, Lori, Virginia, and Gail. And at that time, honestly, I did not care who else was there. I saw them before the jet had even stopped. I'm waving wildly out the window, giving them thumbs up. They're standing there waving, doing the same thing back with their mouths hanging open. Oh, it was so great to see them there. I can't believe it. And of course, there's all those cameras and reporters and everything, just like they told us there would be. So we get out, and it didn't work out the way they said. I think the people in the front got out first, the guy from Billboard and Barbara and the co-pilot, and then John got out, and he turned around and he helped us out, and they're videotaping all this. And the reporters came up to us and started to ask us, how was the flight? And, you know, is John a good pilot? Which he is very good, and all this stuff. And he's saying, don't mind the landing. It was sort of tippy. I guess there was some wind or something, but I didn't really notice it that much. Or he was off center of the line or something. Whatever. That's what Robin said later on. So, and I answered a couple of questions. I don't even remember to this day what they said, and then I noticed that my friends came walking out of the building, and they were coming down towards the place where we were getting off the plane, and I was standing there with John and Robin and I, and these reporters they were asking John more questions than us, like about the concert and everything. So I'm standing there, and I'm dying to see my friends, you know, waving, you know, I want to go see them and all this. So finally I started saying, oh, there's my friends over there. I got to go meet my friends, you know, and I'm pointing. All of a sudden John goes, your friends are here? And I go, yes. And he says, where? And I said, they're standing right over there, you know. So he looks at his watch, and then he tells the reporters, well, we're running kind of late. We got to get going here, you know. Sorry you can't answer any more questions. he takes hold of my elbow and says, "Come on, we're going to go take care of this right now." He led me over to everybody, and we all started greeting each other and hugging and everything. And then the reporters caught John, and he went off to the other side a little bit. And after I said hi to my friends and everything, I turned around and John was gone. So they say I yelled at him, and I don't remember exactly. I think I went over and I said, "Come on, John, come on over and meet my friends." So I got him away from the reporters that time. So he came over and said hi to everybody. And then it was time for us to go. And we had been telling them how, I guess according to the VH1 people who really were supposed to be running this contest, that we were supposed to get in the limousine and go to the hotel where they had arranged for our room. So we had been telling them we didn't really want to go to the hotel. We would rather go directly to Red Rocks. I had other friends there. Plus, if John was going to do sound check, I did not want to miss the sound check. So John finally says, "Well, you guys want to go straight to Red Rocks?" And we said yes. So he asked Barbara, "Is there any reason why they couldn't go straight to Red Rocks, and we'll put their baggage in the trunk and everything, so it'll go with them, or else, they'll just take it." She says, "No, there's no problem." She gave me the keys to our hotel room. So we got in a limo, a separate limo from John. He always had his own, him and Ron. And I think Tim Mooney and a couple other people in his group, his crew that go with him, met at the airport. So they got in their limo and we got in ours, and we went directly to Red Rocks. Red Rocks is about 20 minutes from Denver, I would say, from the airport. So we got there and we went in, drove right in through all the traffic and everything, and drive you right into backstage and everything. And John gets out of his limo and he takes off, going right into backstage. He knows where he's going. So we get out, we know what to do, so we start following him. And there's all kinds of guards back there, and they kept stopping and saying, "Where are you going? Who are you?" So we tried to tell them we're with John, and they said, "Sure you are. Anybody can come in there and say they're with John." And Ron, everybody was gone, so they said, "Well, where are your passes?" And we don't have any passes. Nobody gave us any passes. I tried telling him, I said, "Well, I won the contest. I'm the winner of the contest." "What contest?" So Ron says, "Okay, come on, let's go this way." So we went down around a different way, and we found John's dressing room. We started to go in that way. He's got like this lounge area in there with couches and chairs and everything, the whole bit. They've got this cardboard sign up on the door that says John Denver, but the doors were open, and this guard comes up and says, "Hey, you can't go in there, who are you?" and all this. So we tried it again. He says, "You got to have passes." So we went back out, we went up another ramp and around, and we could hear the crowd cheering and yelling. So we knew that John had to have gone out on stage where people could see him, right? So we found our way up to the stage. How we got past all the guards, I don't know. And the first person we ran into was Ron. And I said, "Ron, we don't have any passes. These guys are trying to tell us we can't be back here, And he tried to tell us, "Well, just tell them you're with us, you're with John." It's okay. We said, "We can't do that. They're giving us a hassle." About that time, I think Tim Mooney came up and said, "Yeah, you got to get them passes, They should have these all-access passes so that it's a little thing you stick on your clothes. And they can see that it's okay for you to be there." So Ron reaches in his pocket, and he pulls out one pass that was his, and he gave it to Robin, and I said, "That's great. Now here I am. I don't have one." And the guards tell us, "Well, you've got to have one too, So we walked on across the stage, and John was on the other side of the stage, and we were going to meet John. So we caught up to John on the other side of the stage, and somewhere in there, someone had told us that John was not going to do an actual sound check, that the orchestra and the band had done sound check earlier, and they didn't feel it was necessary for John to do one. And we also had gotten a note from VH1, or from the hotel, from Barbara, saying that we had to go back to the hotel, that the video cameras were supposed to have been set up at Red Rocks to film us getting out of the limo and going into Red Rocks and everything. So in order for them to do that, we had to go all the way back to the hotel and then come all the way back to Red Rocks again so that they would have time to get set up. Well, it said after sound check, so we waited to see if John was going to do sound check. And we caught up to John on the other side of the stage, and I was walking across the stage in front of the whole audience that was already there. I guess they started letting him in at noon there at Red Rocks because some of those seats are general admission. Just for those of you that don't know how it works at Red Rocks, I thought I'd explain that. And all of a sudden I hear somebody yell, "Patty!" And I recognize the voice. It was Kathy Silvers. And I turned around and I go, "That's Kathy," I said to Robin. I'm looking for her, and she's up there waving in about the 4th or the 5th row. So I go, "There's Kathy." And I point, and I go, "And there's Joanne." And I go, "Oh, and there's Pam." "Hi, Pam," I wave. And I go, "Oh, and there's Jody." "Hi, Jody." "There's Gloria." "Hi, Gloria." And John comes over and he says, "Oh, do you see some friends up there?" And I said, "Yeah, I see people right up there that I know." So he comes over and he puts his arm around me, puts an arm around Robin, and he walks us right up to the microphone. The microphone wasn't turned on. And he presents us to the audience and says, "These are my contest winners." Oh, I know something I have to tell that I forgot. Go back to the airport in Detroit. When we went to get on the plane, we had our luggage and our suitcases and things inside the building there at Detroit. And we were going to go out and get them and bring them out and put them in John's jet. And he says, "No, I'll get them." And Ron says, "Well, come on, I'll help you." And John says, "No, I'll go get them." So John went inside, he got our suitcases, and he personally carried them out to his jet and put them in. He says, "I'm going to be the one to carry their suitcases." That was funny. There's more to that, too, so don't go away. Oh, yes, at Denver, too. Now, go to the airport in Denver when we landed, and it was time to get our suitcases out of the jet and put them in the limousine there at the airport. The pilot went to get them, and John says, "No, I'll get them." Robin went out to take them from him once, and he says, "No." He says, "This is my contest, these are my guests, and I'm going to carry their luggage." He wouldn't let anybody else carry our luggage. Oh. So, back to Red Rocks now. So, he, had us up on the stage there saying hi to everybody. And I asked him, I said, "John, we have to go back to the hotel." They said, "We have to go back so the cameras can get set up here." I said, "Are you going to do a sound check or not?" And he looked at his watch and he says, "Well, it doesn't really look like I'm going to, or I don't need to." I said, "Oh, we have to go back, and I wanted to see your sound check." And he says, "I'll hold off as long as I can if I do one." Then he says, "I'll tell you what, if I do one, I'll just sing one song." Oh. But I guess he didn't. Everybody that I talked to said no, he didn't do a sound check. So we didn't miss anything. We had to go all the way back out again and go back to our hotel. And I did change clothes, so that was one good thing. And talked to Barbara, and she had some, luckily for us, she had some passes for us this time. So we got those. We wouldn't get in any more trouble trying to get in. Telling them we were with John. When it was time for us to come back to Red Rocks again, finally, the concert was supposed to start at 8, and I think we got back about 7:30. And we had to get out of the limo and make like this big deal where the video cameras could film us getting out and going in. And we went in through backstage and everything. And, we actually didn't see John then. And they filmed us going to our seats and sitting down in this special little area they had roped off for us. Okay, this is another little thing I forgot to mention earlier. The first time we went there and we were talking to everybody when we had a hard time getting in, Ron was showing us where our seats were. They had this small area in front row center roped off. And he said, "There's room for 6 people there." And I said, "Well, who's sitting there besides us?" And he said, "No one, just you two." And I said, "Oh, okay, just us then." He said, "Yes." And then he says, "Why don't you get your 4 friends and have them come down and sit with you?" And I go, "Oh, do you think that would be okay? I mean, nobody would mind?" And he says, "No, I don't see why not. There's room for 6 there." So I said, "Okay, I'll tell them." So when we came back and we went in and we went to the front row and they filmed us and everything, I happened to see Virginia as I was coming in, and everybody's coming up to me and greeting me and congratulating me and everything while they're filming and all this stuff. And I caught Virginia and I said, "Virginia, Ron has personally invited you guys to come down and sit with us." And she says, "What? Are you sure?" And I said, "Yes. Ron told me to ask you guys to come down and sit with me in front row. It's okay. Nobody's going to say anything." She says, "Okay, I'll go get the others." So Lou and Lori and Virginia and Gail got to come down and sit with me in front row center. And, Robin's cousin, Janine, who also lives in Morrison, was there, along with her husband, and a neighbor lady of hers, and her daughter. And eventually we ended up with Janine and the neighbor lady and her daughter sitting in the front row with us, too. There was room for all of us down there. The more the merrier, right? So we sat down, and I don't think we sat down, really. We stood out there talking with everybody, Lou and Lori. It was just about the only time I had with them, talking about things that had happened so far, and they told me how they found the airport and all their little tales of what they'd been doing. They had been to Aspen the day before and came back, and they were telling me all the fun they'd been having, and it was just great to be with everybody. And I went up to see Kathy and the group she was sitting with and showed her the concert pictures. She'd been to some of the same concerts that I had, and we'd taken pictures at. Said hello to everybody there. And we sat down in our seats, and before we knew it, it was time for the concert to start. So, concert started, John came out and started singing, just like he should. And after saying his first set of songs, when he says hello and all that, he introduced us as being his contest winners, sitting front row, center stage, you know. So, and then he mentioned us again later during the concert, something about how great it was to have been there and to be able to fly us there and all that. He mentioned us again by name. And there was no intermission at the concert, which surprised me. Not too much happened during the concert that I can remember. Just the usual concert. The audiences is great at Red Rocks. They really participate and they really get into it. Having a great time clapping and singing and swaying back and forth and everything. They gave him such a second encore. He came out and he said, okay, do you want to hear this old guitar or Starwood and Aspen? So people are yelling, you know, this one or that one or both and everything. So he finally says, okay. And he sings this old guitar. And then he sings Starwood and Aspen anyway. And then he left. We couldn't get him to come back again. He looked like he was really, really tired. I guess he'd been up since 4 o'clock that morning to come and get us. I don't know why, but... And he'd just come back from Russia and from China and from Russia before that, so... He said his body didn't know what time zone it was in or where he was at or anything that was going on. And there was a champagne reception afterwards for anyone to benefit Windstar. Anyone who purchased a special $50 ticket got to go backstage afterwards. And they had a table set up with all kinds of goodies, mostly fruit and cheeses and that kind of stuff, and then champagne or soft drinks. The video cameras were back in there, supposed to have been filming us while we were getting something to eat and everything and just walking around. So, and John, after a while, it took him quite a while to come out. He didn't come out for at least a half an hour. And he finally did, but there was a crowd of like 100 people around him all the time. So we didn't figure we needed to push our way in. We just stayed around in the background. I got to see my friends again, some of them Pam and Kathy and Jody, and they got in to see John and to meet him. Some of them, it was the first time they'd met him. And shake hands with him and say hi, and I was glad to hear that and talk to him about that. Got to tell him goodbye and everything, and how great it was that they were there. And everybody congratulated me on winning and saying how glad they were it was somebody who really cared about John that had won. And so the reception lasted for a while, and John was sort of trying to get out of there, I think, and there was this crowd of people around him. Finally, somebody, I think it was Tim Mooney, came up to me, and I had somewhere in the crowd lost Robin and the VH1 lady. I keep calling her that. I should call her by her name, Barbara. Down over on the side somewhere. So Tim Mooney came up and said, if you're going out to dinner, you better start heading out towards your limousine because John's going to be working his way out of here in just a couple of minutes to go out to the dinner that we were supposed to go to with him. So I found Robin and Barbara, and we went out to our limo, got in, and we headed off across town to Denver again and to the restaurant where we are to have dinner with John. Well, I thought of a couple more things that we discussed in the plane on the way to Denver. We had asked John if, well, first of all, actually, I think my mother-in-law was asking him how the trip to Russia went and everything. He was telling her how he had gone there and how he's trying to open the door for other entertainers from the United States to be able to go over there, and he's started a fund now. I guess he has some sort of bank account or something over there, I don't know, for musicians and entertainers from the United States to come over there. That was one of the agreements when he did these concerts, was that part of the money he was paid would be paid in Russian rubles so that he could start this fund and hopefully get a cultural exchange going again. He has talked a couple of times about getting the Denver Symphony Orchestra to go over there. So he wasn't paid very much for going over there and doing those concerts in Russia. In fact, it didn't even meet his expenses, I'm sure. And also we asked him about the Broadway play Will, and he says yes, it's still on. He's still working on it. He hopes to have more time to spend on that pretty soon. The main things that are taking his time right now seem to be the television show he's trying to broadcast worldwide from satellites. He's trying to get organized from China. And also the Broadway play Will, and his plans to go on the space shuttle. He's still working on those things. Those are the major things he's working on right now. The thing from the Great Wall of China is doubtful now whether it will be ready by September 1st. He doesn't want to push it and have them say, forget it, it can't be done. So it looks like it's getting quite involved, and it's going to be taking a lot more time than they thought. So rather than try and get it all done by September and take the chance that they might just say no, he's going to sort of pull back a little bit if it looks like it's going to be that way, and wait until next spring to do the telecast from China. Let's see. In order to put on this thing in China, he needs a sponsor. A sponsor with about $1.5 million willing to invest in this thing, I guess. So I'm sure he could do it himself, but that's not getting him a sponsor. Like Robin says, if it's going to be on television, you've got to have a sponsor. So that was another problem with that, I kind of gathered. We went in separate limousines to the dinner. When we got there was about 14 people altogether. I don't know how they all came. There was only about 6 of us in our limousine, and John was in a different one again with Ron and everybody. And it was about midnight when we got there, but I guess special arrangements had been made to keep the place open just for our little dinner party. So we went to the upstairs in this restaurant in Denver, and they took us clear to the back of the room, and they had tables set up all along one wall. Like I said, I think there was 12 to 14 people there total. There were representatives from RCA, and then from the VH1 and us, and just everybody. I'm really not sure who everybody was. Of course, I had Robin sitting on one side of me and John sitting on the other side of me. And on the other side of Robin was Barbara, and on the other side of John was, I think it was a man from VH1, but he was really nice, and he talked like he knew John quite well, like they'd been friends for a while. And then there was Ron, was sort of like on the other side of the table from us, and then some other people and on down and all that. We'd been warned that they wanted to videotape some of our dinner and everything, so they had champagne there at first, and everybody was toasting things with champagne. They did a toast to John, his great concert, and he did one to the contest and the VH1 and the winners, and the whole bit. And we ordered our dinner. We got the menus. We ordered dinner. I asked the lady if I could keep my menu as a souvenir, and she said sure. So I then took my menu and asked John if he would autograph it for me, which he very willingly did. He said he didn't mind a bit. I said, I know how you feel about autographs, but, and he said sure, he didn't mind. And it says, to Patty and Robin, I'll never forget tonight. Thank you for sharing it with me. I love you, John Denver. And that is one of my most treasured possessions right now. I have a lot of those, but that's one of my newest ones. Then they started coming in with the video cameras and the lights. This is a very, very dimly lit corner of the restaurant. I mean, you're sitting clear back there. They had about 4 tables pushed together, and they were round tables, but they had moved them together. And there's candlelight, barely bright enough to read the menu. You have to really squint down and look at the menu in order to be able to read it. So they come in, and at either end of the table, they want to set up these bright floodlights for the video cameras and everything to tape some things, because VH1 has to do a follow-up to be shown on TV to this contest winning. And so we waited, and we kept talking while they were setting up all this stuff. It seemed to take forever. We were afraid that our dinner was going to come while they were setting everything up and before they could interview us. And the lady had told me, a different lady, that she was going to ask me some questions, and she wanted me to answer them as if I was just talking, not as if somebody had asked me questions. And that is really hard to do. There was about 4 or 5 questions. So they finally got these cameras and lights and everything set up, and they turned on the lights, and talk about a change. It was terrible. And they started asking me these questions. They're sticking a microphone in my face. Stuff, I answered as best as I could, trying to make it sound like no one had asked me a question. And John was very helpful in giving me some ideas and saying some things too, some input into what I'd say. And Robin said a couple of things. And it came down to the last question. And since then, I cannot even remember what the last question was. But I was at a loss for words. I just could not think of anything to say. So I go, and I looked at John, and he says, okay. So he took it, and he started answering. And then I could add a little bit to that. And he really made it easy for me. I did okay until I got done with that last question. And I really got so nervous that I just couldn't say anything. But he helped me out. He's used to all that kind of thing. More information we found out during the dinner while I think of it. There was more talk about Will and how he was still working on that and everything. Other people had asked him the same things that we had already heard. They mentioned, I'm not sure if it was during dinner, it might have been in the plane. Somewhere along the way, Ron mentioned that they were very seriously looking into finding another movie for John to do. That's something that they would like to do in the coming year, was to find another movie. They talked about how John had been the host of the Grammys so many times in the past, and that it was very possible that he could show up on the Grammys again, hosting it this next year. And also, we found out that he is thinking about doing Lake Tahoe again. If it works out right, doing the ski tournament there at least. I think Harrah's would go along with that. But Ron mentioned the ski tournament, and he said the reason that John did not do it last year was because he thought he was going to be working on this China broadcast last year. And the China thing didn't work out then, so he could have done the ski tournament after all. And Ron said if he had been taking care of things for John like he is now, if he'd been doing it last year, what he would have done was had them go ahead and plan the ski tournament and get all the stars booked and everything and get it all set up. And then if it happened that John couldn't show up there, they would get another celebrity to fill in with him, for him. Well, that wouldn't go over too good with us fans, but it would be a good idea. At least we would have had a better chance of seeing John. So, you know, if things look busy this year, that may be what they'll try to do for the ski tournament. So that's something to keep our eyes and ears open for and think about. Both of them, the Grammys and the Lake Tahoe ski tournament. The video people were very, shall we say, persistent, and they kept messing around and doing this and doing that, and wanting to film this and film that. They wanted to film another toast with the champagne, and they wanted to, I can't remember what all they had to do. And John was so tired, his eyes were so red, and I know how he felt. I could just sense how he felt. He just wanted to sit there and relax, have dinner. I'm sure he was hungry. Have dinner and visit with everybody and talk. So here you've got all this video cameras and reporters and everything in there. And he was really getting irritated with them. He kept asking me how I'm doing. Am I doing okay? You know, and saying, well, it's all part of the deal. You know, you got to go along with it and all this. I was doing fine. I think he was getting a little upset with them, and he was trying to encourage himself as much as he was me. But it got to the point to where I could almost feel that he was getting really tense and irritated by them. I mean, I could just sense it. I could feel it. I was sitting so close to him anyway. My elbow was practically touching his the whole night. But they finally did. They packed up all their stuff and took down the lights and turned them off. Then we really couldn't see anything after all of that. But we talked a little while more, everybody, and then our dinner came. And this is one of the funniest things that's happened on this whole trip. Everybody has ordered something a little bit different. You know, Robin and I had some fish, and John had this pasta dish with scallops in it, and he'd gotten a salad before that with it. So, and other people around the tables, the various tables, got different things to eat. So after we'd eaten a little bit, John started asking people, can I have a taste of that? Can I have a bite of that? And it's something, I guess him and Rod or their family or somebody does, and they call it bites all around, and you get to taste everybody's food. Well, he hadn't tasted mine, and they came and they asked him if he was finished with his plate, and he said yes. So they took his away. I still had some fish left on my plate, but I couldn't eat it all. So John, I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden John goes, he leans over and he goes really close, can I have a taste of that? And I said, sure. So they'd taken his fork with his plate. So he took my fork and tasted my fish. He said it was good, and I didn't eat any more of it, and they didn't come and take my plate yet. So a few minutes later, he said, can I have another bite of that? So I said yes. He took 2 or 3 bites of my fish with my fork. He tasted 5 or 6 other people's food. It was so funny. I had a hard time keeping from laughing while I was there at the table. I'm telling you. Oh. So then eventually they came to take my plate away, and there was still some fish left on there. So the waitress asked me, are you finished with that? And before I told her yes, that she could take it, I leaned over to John and I said, do you want any more of this fish? And he said, no, that's okay. Oh, it was funny. And all during dinner, and every 5 minutes probably, John was rubbing my elbow or rubbing my arm or putting his hand on the back of my chair and saying, how you doing? You doing okay? Are you holding up okay? Every 5 minutes, you know, rubbing the arm and all this. I thought I was going to die sometimes, you know. Yeah, I'm doing fine. I'm just fine, you know. Look right in your eyes. one of the questions that I had to answer for the interview there at dinner had something, I don't know, somehow it led into, I think it had some, maybe they asked me what was so special about the John Denver fans or something. And everybody told me that if I got the chance, that what I should tell John was how he brought people together and how his music had brought us all these friends, and that we know that's what he really wanted it to do, and that the music was working in this way. Well, during one of the questions on this interview, I sat there looking straight into his eyes, as close as can be, and I told him that his music had brought me all these friends. It had brought us all together there in Denver from everywhere in the United States, that I had very good friends all around the country, all around the world, I mean, you know, in Germany, Austria, Australia, just everywhere over in Europe, England, Switzerland, Holland. I told him that he had brought me all these wonderful, wonderful friends, and that they were all such great people, and I loved them all so much. And I practically started crying. And Ron had moved away from the table because he didn't want to get into the video camera stuff. He was sitting back in the corner behind John, and while I was telling John this, I glanced up at Ron, and Ron is sitting back there shaking his head up and down, going, wonderful, great, beautiful. So I'm looking straight into John's eyes, telling him this. I practically started crying. I think he had tears in his eyes by the end. And finally he says, well, that's nice, you know, that's beautiful. He says, I know it works. He says, I know it does. And that was one of the best times, one of the best things that I did, that I really remember, was telling him that. So we sat there. Nobody could eat any desserts because we were all too full of the good food we'd had. And John had been drinking wine and champagne. He hadn't had any sleep. I guess he'd been up since 4 that morning. I think I already said that. So he said goodnight, and he went out and got in his limousine, and he left. About 5 minutes after that, the whole rest of the crowd, everybody got up and left. There was, I think, 5 limousines out there when we went out there. Everybody going different ways and everything. So that was about 3 o'clock in the morning. We went back to our hotel room, and Lou and Lori and Virginia and Dale had asked me to call them at their hotel no matter what time it was, so I called them at 3 o'clock in the morning and talked to them. I know one other thing I told John at dinner when he asked me one time how I was doing. I said, well, I'd rather be in my jeans and t-shirt out in the woods somewhere, and he says, yeah, well, I know, but you gotta do this, you know. You gotta put up with this kind of thing once in a while. Oh, let me think. So that was the dinner, and we got in at 3 in the morning, and probably didn't get to sleep until almost 4. And originally, we had planned that John was going to fly us to Aspen the next day instead of back to Detroit, so that we could meet our cousins there and go hiking or something with them for a couple more days there in the Aspen area. But originally we were supposed to leave, John had said 10 o'clock. Everybody was supposed to be at the airport ready to go, right? Well, since we didn't leave so late, everybody was asking him, is it still on for 10 o'clock? And he looked at his watch, and he looked at Ron, and he thought about it, and he says, well, since it's so late, do you think we could make it 11:30? And he asked Ron, can you arrange that, Ron? Can you take care of it? And Ron says, yeah, well, I guess I can. He said, I'll have to go back to my hotel room and make about 7 phone calls to the pilots and this and that so that they could change the time to leave at 11:30, to leave from Denver to go to Aspen. But that's what we did. We changed the time to 11:30. And Ron was staying at the same hotel we were, so we arranged for us to meet Ron down in the lobby at 11 o'clock the next morning to ride with him. He had a rent-a-car that he had to return. To ride with Ron to go to the airport, and the VH1 people were leaving. We were done with them. Okay? Finally. So, that's what we did. We got up the next morning, and got everything all packed, ready to go. Went down to the lobby about, I guess it was about 5 minutes to 11. Got checked out and everything taken care of for us. And we sat down to wait for Ron. Well, Ron came running down about 10 minutes later saying he knew he was late and he was sorry and all this. And he had his luggage and everything, and we had to take it all out and get it loaded into this little rent-a-car that he had. And he happened to mention that in the morning newspaper, I think it's is it the Denver Post that's the morning newspaper? I don't know. Anyway, but there was a review of the concert, and I said, oh, there is? Is there a picture? And he said, yes. And I said, oh, I've got to have some. I've got to have one for me and for my friends. So he says, oh, yeah. He says, well, let's go right over here in the gift shop and get you some. So here we are. We're already late. Ron has told us that John gets upset if he's late when they have to leave to go somewhere. But it's Ron's normal thing for him to be late. So, we go into this gift shop in the hotel and get the newspapers. Ron asked me, how many do you want? And I said 5. So he picks me up 5. These are the Sunday newspapers, and they're really thick. So I get my 5 newspapers and put them in this big shopping bag, and I go out and carry these 5 newspapers, have to put in this car. And Ron buys the other paper. The other paper was out then, too. It's the Rocky Mountain News. So he said he would read that one in the plane on the way to Aspen. So I got my papers. We're driving to the airport in Denver, and Ron's a crazy LA driver. He zips through traffic, in and out, changing lanes. Did something awful. And we hadn't had any breakfast. Oh, here he is zipping to the airport. We pull in there and go through the gate. You have to tell him who you are and everything. We go pulling up there. There sits the jet, ready to go. It's got the blinker lights going on it and everything. John's ready to go. Ron comes in. He told us on the way there, he says, don't worry about it. It's not your fault we're late. And I said, yeah, but my newspapers. He says, no, don't worry about that. I'll take all the blame. Now, I was late anyway to begin with, so don't worry about it. And then after we got there, Ron says, if it hadn't been for us that were going to Aspen, that John probably would have took off and left if it had been just Ron, because he was like 5 or 10 minutes late. We talked to Ron quite a bit in the car on the way there, found out some things. We told him we were going up to the Tower restaurant and that there was something on the menu called J.D.'s Barbecue Chicken. Now, the Tower restaurant, for anybody that doesn't know, is a restaurant up in Snowmass, which is near Aspen, that John owns. And when Ron heard there was something called J.D.'s Barbecue Chicken, he says, they're not using our secret family recipe, are they? John didn't give them that, did he? And he goes, oh, we don't know anything about it. Whoops, maybe we shouldn't have said anything. And he says, I'm going to have to ask him about that. And what it is the recipe for the sauce for the chicken. Actually, it wasn't chicken, it was shrimp, because we went up there and that's what I had. It's, instead of being tomato-y based type barbecue sauce, it's a mustard based, and it's really spicy. It's almost hot. But that was funny that Ron was upset that John gave out his secret family recipe for this barbecue sauce. We asked John about it later, and he did, and he said, well, no, it's not exactly their recipe. It's close to it, but it's not just exactly the way that they make it in their family. So that was okay. So there at the airport was Robin's cousin, Janine, and her husband, and their little boy, and her neighbor lady, and their little girl, the same ones that had been at the concert the night before. And they got to meet John and everything. They got there before we did. So, and they were driving to Aspen to meet us, which is like at least a 4-hour drive. We were flying with John, just 20-minute ride. So. But we had a plane full. We had a pilot and a co-pilot. There's a hangar right at this place in Denver where he keeps his jet. It's actually Windstar Aviation right on the door. And the hangar is where he keeps the Windstar 1 when he's not using it. He keeps it in Denver because that is where he can keep it inside. There's not room in Aspen, and it's only 20 minutes away. When he needs it, he says he can just call him on the phone, and they'll fly it up there to him whenever he needs it. Must be nice, huh? But he had to have another pilot and co-pilot, so that they could fly the jet back from Aspen, because I guess he wasn't going to be needed for a while or something. So, anyway, we got in the jet again. We had a full load that time. He also had 2 other friends along that sat in the back with us on the way there. And he told us he was going to take us on the scenic route if he can and fly close to the mountains. Well, when we got in the plane, they told us that the weather or something was kind of bad, so we wouldn't be able to fly that way like he wanted to, but he'd see when we got there what we could do. So when we got close to Aspen, he did go down close to the mountain. In fact, the lady, his friend that was riding with us, said, "What's he doing?" Here he is flying between 2 mountains, down in a valley, low to the ground, with a mountain on each side. And this lady is saying, for all the years we've known John, all the times he's flown us back and forth this way, he's never done this before. She was getting a little nervous about it. I wasn't. I figured, John knows what he's doing. He's a pilot. He's got 2 pilots up there with him. I'm sure he's done it before. It's just that he's never done it when they were along. But flying right between the mountains, down low to the ground, what it was that he flew us over his cabin at Woods Lake in Colorado. And nobody there to pick us up at the airport in Aspen or anything, because obviously Robin's cousin wasn't going to be there yet, although we did have a motel reservation. So John was there, and we were talking about, well, you know, we were sort of saying we'll get a cab or something, and all of a sudden John wasn't there. He was out talking to somebody, so he walks up to us out there in the middle of the airport in Aspen and says, "Put their stuff in with mine, you know, load them in my car and I'll take them to their motel." We about died, you know. So they did. They had this girl come out with a little cart, and she loaded all of John's stuff out of the plane and all of our stuff and Ron's stuff, and then John has a Jeep Wagoneer parked over there, and they were loading it all in the back of that. And so we got in his car, and he drove us to our motel in Aspen. He's a very good driver. The speed limit when you get into town in Aspen is 25, and that's exactly what he drove. I asked him, he had started to tell us at dinner the night before what his favorite part of the concert was, and he never finished it. He got sidetracked into talking about something else. So I asked him, I said, "You were going to tell us last night what your favorite part of the concert was." And Ron goes, "Yeah, you were." So he thought about it, and he says, "Oh, yeah, that's right." He says, "Well, I guess it was when the audience here responded to something that he said about a song or some comment that he made. The audience here at Red Rocks had responded the same way as the audience in Russia did. Or the audience in Russia responded the same way as we did." And he thought that was really great. That was his favorite part of the concert. But he couldn't remember exactly what it was, and I couldn't either. Maybe one of these days when I'm listening to the tape, I can listen with that in mind, and then I can remember. But right now I can't. If anybody out there that was at the concert remembers what it was, I think he said something about it at the concert too. I had this gift from Lou and Lori that I wanted to give him, so I stopped there at the airport in Aspen because I didn't know if we were going to be going with him or not. And he started to unwrap it, and he did. He stood there and he unwrapped it, and it's this beautiful plaque with a beautiful verse on it and everything from Lou and Lori. I think it has something to do with the state of Washington. I actually didn't get to read it that well. I was trying to read over his shoulder. And we took some pictures of him unwrapping it, and then he held it up in front of him and took my picture with him holding it. So I was sure that he got their gift, and I'm sure that you guys will be thrilled, right? But then we found out we were going with him in his car anyway. And I said, "Well, John, I've got a couple of things I wanted to give you." He says, "Well, come on, we can do that when we get you to your motel." But, okay. So we went with him, and he drove us to our motel. And we got there, and we went inside to get registered and checked in and everything, and the manager wasn't there. So Ron and John come in, bringing our suitcases and everything in, and the manager wasn't there. So we set them down inside and told them they didn't have to wait, that they could go on. Another thing I wanted to tell you was that while John was taking our suitcases out of the back of his Jeep, he broke a gift he had from the Chinese television company. It was some ceramic, I think it looked like a cowboy on a horse or something, some gift, and he was really upset about that. It made me feel bad because he did it taking our suitcases out, but what could I say? Finally he says, "Well, I'll have to be more careful when I do things like this or something," but he was pretty upset when he did it. So I said, okay, John, I've got a couple of things I wanted to give you. One was a check for WinStar, a donation that I wanted to make out of my prize money that I won for the concert. So I gave that to him, got my picture taken with him holding it, and he folded it, and he put it in the pocket of his shorts that he was wearing. And another thing was a T-shirt I had gotten him with that says the No Buy Special on it from our city here. So I gave him that, and while he was taking our suitcases out of the back of his Jeep, he reached inside, right, I didn't see it before, but somewhere in there, in his suitcase, or on top of his suitcase or something, he pulled out the turquoise shirt. Remember, now I told you about this earlier, and he turned around and he handed it to me. He gave me the turquoise shirt. Oh, blew me away. So they left us there then at the motel while we were waiting for the manager to come back so we could get checked in. And we thought, we said, well, maybe we'll see you again. He told us he would be at his office on Tuesday. Monday this was Sunday. Monday they had to fly down to Oklahoma, him and Ron, because his mother's aunt or somebody had died and they were all going to the funeral. So he said Tuesday morning early he'd probably be in his office. If we wanted to come up and say goodbye or see him again or anything, that he would be there maybe. Well, we didn't know if we'd see him again or not, so we said our goodbyes and everything there. And then I gave him a hug, and I gave Ron a hug, and they left. Well, the manager came, and we were starting to get our room, our key, and everything checked in. And I looked out the window, and there's John's Jeep pulling in again. And Ron gets out, and he walks in, and he says, we're just wondering if you guys would like to go have lunch with us. We about fell over. I mean, that really blew us away. So we said, yeah. We left our suitcases there in the office in the motel. We went back out and got in his Jeep again. And they drove us downtown Aspen. And while we're driving around, there was this flat, long box that I was sitting in the back seat that kept hitting me in the back. And I'd moved it a couple times, and I went to move it again because it had slid up and hit me in the back. And I said, this box keeps hitting me in the back. What's in this box anyway? I hope it's nothing that's going to get broke again or anything. And John says, oh, it's just a gold record. And I go, a gold record? And it was halfway open. So I pulled it up, and I looked inside it, and it's the gold record for Seasons of the Heart. So I got to see the gold record. I like his reaction. Oh, it's just a gold record. Oh. So we found a parking place in Aspen, got out of his Jeep, and we started walking uptown. They knew a couple of restaurants that they wanted to go to. And if you want an experience, just try walking down the streets of Aspen with John. I mean, you turn a few heads, you get a few strange looks, So we went up to this one little sidewalk cafe type restaurant, and we'd heard him and Ron had been discussing back and forth. Well, do you want to eat here or do you want to eat Mexican food? They knew this good Mexican restaurant. And so we went to this one sidewalk cafe, and we'd heard the waitress tell the people in front of us that there were 4 tables of people waiting in front of you. So John walks up there and says, can we get a table? And she says, I'm sorry, but there would be 4 people in front of you. She told John that too. So I said, well, that settles it. Let's go down to the Mexican place, which was like 3 doors down. So we went down there, and it was outside too, but you have to go downstairs and outside like in like patio. So he walks in there, and everybody's, hi, John, hi, JD, how was this? How was Russia? All this. So I guess they knew him in there. They took us to a table back in this corner, but we were still outside. Only the sidewalk was up above us, and you could see people walking by. It's called Toro's, if anybody has ever been there. They have really good Mexican food. And we sat down and we ordered our food, and it was, I can't remember if it was Ron or John says, now remember, it's bites all around, everybody. So everybody tasted everybody's food. Robin and Ron both got the same thing, and the dish that they ordered happened to come with a salad. So Ron told John, he said, I don't want my salad, John. When it comes, you can have my salad. And by the way, John had ranch dressing on his salad, and I said, that's one of my favorites. And he said, it's mine too. So John ate his salad. Robin ate about 3/4 of the salad, and he left the rest. We're sitting there, and John looks over at Robin's plate, and he says, do you want the rest of your salad? And Robin says, no. So John says, can I have it? So Robin hands John his plate, and he scrapes the salad off of Robin's plate onto his plate, and he eats the rest of Robin's salad. Oh. So we sat there, and we talked, and John told me that he really doesn't mind doing autographs unless it's with a whole crowd where it brings a lot of people and everything. And he also told me that he really hated to leave Red Rocks that night, that he wished he could have stayed there and sang all night. His heart really wanted to stay there and sing all night, but his body and his voice just weren't cooperating. He says, I really would have had a lot more songs I could have sang. And I go, yeah, you had about 250 more songs you'd like to do. He goes, yeah. And then somehow in the conversation, Ron, all of a sudden, I think it was a quiet time, nobody said anything for a while, and all of a sudden Ron goes, so John, what are the 4 levels of inebriation? And John looks at me, and he holds out his hand to me like, you tell him, you know. So I did. And John's sitting there nodding his head with me, no. He knew that I would know. At dinner it was funny too, somebody asked John, so John, when's your birthday anyway? And John had a mouthful of food, and I leaned over and I said, do you want me to tell him? But by that time he had swallowed his food, so he told him. But I offered anyway, right? But anyway, and then after lunch, we sat there probably for 2 hours eating lunch and talking. Robin told him all about the Ford plant where he works and the robot welding machines that he works on and everything. They were really interested. He really had their attention while he was talking. Every time he would tell him about something, John would go, oh really, far out. And Robin told him something else, and John would go, far out. I think if he would have said far out one more time, I would have started giggling. I mean, it was like every comment was far out. But we finally left there, walked down into the streets of Aspen, and John says, well, you guys want to walk back to your motel now after that lunch? And we said, yeah, we'd walk around town, maybe get a couple of things, and then walk back to our motel. So he said, okay, well, maybe we'll see you again, and or we'll see you again. You know, we're not going to say goodbye. We'll just say we'll see you again, maybe in the next couple of days before we left. And I gave him another hug out there in the streets of Aspen. And that was the last we saw of him. We went to his office on Tuesday, but he wasn't there. They showed us around inside his office and what it was like and everything. But that's pretty much my whole story. Tales of the Dreamland Express contest.